Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome. I am so honored today to hang out with an old friend that totally transitioned in her life, and I want to unpack that with you today. Chellee Siewert, how are you?
I am doing great. I don't know about old though.
Oh, come on now. I'm already 55. I'm just happy. Just, you know what? Any day that we can walk around, I'm cool with at this point.
Absolutely. I just kidding you.
So I don't know what other word to use. So not a young friend. You're way younger than me, so I totally
Okay.
get that. But you actually started a company called Capture Sports Marketing, and
Yes.
so tell us a little bit about that, what you do, and what awesome things you're working on right now.
Sure. So Dave and I actually knew each other when I was at the Metropolitan Builders Association. So that's where we go
Correct.
back to.
In the
And
1800s, I think that was right.
1800s for sure.
It feels like it at least.
It
So
does. It really does.
yeah.
So since that time, I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneurial. I have many entrepreneurs in my family. So my grandpa started four small businesses at this time. My dad and my uncles ran, the largest one until they sold it in 2000.
Oh,
And I
neat.
can I can clearly remember going to my parents and saying, I think I'm going to go out on my own. And it was funny the reactions that I got from both of them. My dad, having ran a business, was like, do it.
Yeah.
You'll never work harder,
Sure.
but it's yours. And there's something to be said about it being yours. And he's like, at the time, my kids were younger. And so he said, you'll have the flexibility that you want.
Right.
Um, the other side of the coin is my mom. And she was like, what are you doing? Like, you saw us live through a
Yeah.
small business.
Sure.
And so it was really interesting to go through the process of it.
Sure.
So I launched Capture Sports Marketing just about 9 years ago now.
Wow.
And our niche is really working with athletes, coaches, and teams from across the country solely on their philanthropic impact.
Okay.
It lends to their brand, it lends to marketing, but it's really, we're not marketing agents. We work with marketing agents, but it's really on how they can utilize their platform for good. And so, we were extraordinarily fortunate that right after I had started Capture Sports Marketing, I was introduced to the Watt family from here in Pewaukee with JJ, and have worked with him ever since on their foundation, and just the amazing impact that he has had both in Houston, in Pewaukee, but really across the whole country through his
Sure.
foundation.
Sure.
And so we just have continued to build on that and work with a lot of different individuals who are phenomenal athletes, but they're better humans.
Sure. So and that's so weird because, and not weird in a bad way, but it's so weird in a good way that that was such a shift
It
from,
was.
I mean, when I knew you, you were the executive director at the NBA, you were building a team, you had everything going. It was really going in a positive direction. Things were, this was in, 2004, 2005. I
Yep.
mean, my gosh, if you weren't busy in the time that we were at the NBA together, you shouldn't be in business because, I
Right.
mean, it was just like flourishing at the building community. But then that thought process that, oh my gosh, I want to try something new, was that with you prior, like your whole life, or when did that
Yes.
kind of first jump into your brain that, I love what I'm doing, but I think I could love something better?
You know what? It's from little.
Okay.
I mentioned that my grandpa, started the businesses, but my
Yeah.
grandma had a business too. And, she's 95 now. And at that
Wow.
time, women, it wasn't common for them to own a business at that
Sure.
time. And ironically, she was an interior decorator that I can remember when I was little going with her to the parade of homes
Okay.
to decorate because she was involved with that. And
Oh,
so
neat.
I saw at a young age that, anybody can do it. If you're a man or a woman, it really doesn't matter. You can do it. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
I started my career off in nonprofit.
Okay.
And so it was with Rogers Memorial Hospital, and it was with the National Multiple Sclerosis Society for many, many years. And I think being at particularly the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, because we were a small team that was responsible for everything, I really operated and felt like, and their board operated it like its own business.
Okay.
And so everybody that worked there kind of had to have an entrepreneurial spirit, because you were doing budgeting, you were doing events, you were doing marketing. And so it was kind of at that point that it started brewing for me.
Sure.
And then I went to, the association, the Metropolitan Builders Association, for like 5 years. I was there.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that I was like, okay, I'm going to go out on my own. And I was sitting at a lunch, and there was, I was sitting next to a fellow board member with the Waukesha County Business Alliance, and he had just purchased the Milwaukee Wave,
Okay.
and said, I'm looking for a VP of marketing. I'm looking for someone to launch our foundation. Do you have an interest? And I said, absolutely. But I also told him and was very
Yeah.
honest, you
Yeah.
know what, I want to own my own company at some
Sure.
point. And so we agreed for 2 years. And so at that 2-year mark, exactly on the mark, I went in and said, I'm going. And they were
Wow.
my first client.
That's so
And
cool. Now, Milwaukee Wave is a professional indoor soccer team,
yes,
correct? Just
yes,
for anyone listening that's not from the Milwaukee area. So
yes.
how is that particular, so did you transition slowly into it? Is that how you feel like that? Or did you just see this cliff and you jumped? Because I
You know
run
what?
into people that have it both ways. So I'm just curious what you felt you were,
For me, it
where
was
you were.
more of a transition into it.
Okay.
I filed my official paperwork June 1st, but it really wasn't until October 1st that
Sure.
I launched. And so
Okay.
I had been building out my business plan before that. I had been getting my logo ready. I had been doing that. I had prepared for on a whole bunch of fronts. Financially, we
Yeah.
had been preparing that, okay, we need to save up so that we have some reserves, and as I launch and as we do it. And so it was kind of a transition, but then it was like that October 1st, it was like I was done with the wave, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm out on my own. And
Yeah.
my original business plan was more working with companies on their cause marketing
Okay.
than it was with the athletes and their platforms.
Okay.
And so it, people always say, like, why did you do this, or how did you start it, or
Sure.
and it evolved, quite honestly. Some of the opportunities that presented themselves made us pivot a little bit, made us
Okay.
evolve. And so it really was about 4 years ago that I remember meeting with one of my old bosses, and we had lunch, and she said to me, don't be afraid of success. Because I was telling her, like, I don't know if I should put my stake in the ground and officially change my name to Capture Sports Marketing and make
Sure.
this my whole niche. And
Sure.
I always thought I only wanted to have 4 to 5 people on our team, and now we have 12.
Wow. Congrats.
And to be able to do that. And so it was at that point, about 4 years ago, that we put the nail in the ground,
Okay.
and said we're going to be solely focused on this niche.
So you started it was Capture Marketing at first, correct?
It was.
Okay. And that's like the funny thing, similar story for me, because I remember the minute I was at the Perkins on Highway 83 and 94 on a Tuesday afternoon, and my partner and I had done our deal, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, so I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? He's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I got nowhere to go. So, and it was interesting because he said, well, I'd like to be your first client. And as I sold my business and started my coaching practice. And I'm like, I said, Jim, unfortunately, you didn't listen to me when I was your partner. So I don't want this to be my first venture with you. My first client not listening to me is going to be like, that's going to kill me, right? That's going to like knock me off the ledge. So I'm like, I can't. So here I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I sold my business in one day. I got a client that I declined in one day. And I'm thinking, what are you doing, right? Did you have those what are you doing moments
Oh,
at
yes.
the beginning for you?
Oh, yes. Quite often.
Okay.
And I think it's going through them and making some of those decisions. I mean, I can remember one in particular that a client that we were working with wanted us to be a partner with them on something that would have been the most revenue for us, and it would have been the most exposure for us. And I struggled with the decision, but I knew ultimately that it wasn't the right time for us and it wasn't the right partner for us. But it's like weighing that, okay, like
Sure.
I could get this revenue right
Yeah,
here, or I
exactly.
could do
Yeah.
that. And I
Yeah.
ultimately said no.
Oh,
And
good.
um, it was hard.
Oh, yeah.
And I kept thinking to myself, holy cow, I just walked away from this. Like, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of those moments, but I think some of those moments, like you just said, they're defining
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're never going to forget it.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I keep playing it over in my mind and think, was that you still
Yeah.
kind of, it's easy to look back and go, was that the right thing?
Yep.
'Cause for me, unfortunately, then the second client that I had ended up never paying me and went
Oh,
bankrupt and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 0 for 2. This isn't really working out how I had planned, you plan to grow and start and build and just go crazy with your business. And unfortunately, it didn't start that way. It's fortunately it's now that way for me.
yep.
So it all ends well, right? But
It does. It
it's
does.
so funny in the moment how like incredibly painful and scary that can be. Who did you have, or how did you surround yourself with people? Who did how did you, where was your mentor? Who was helping you through that, Chellee?
Yeah, there was a couple of different people that I turned to for a couple of different reasons. One was, a former boss that I had mentioned,
Sure.
and she was instrumental of. And when she was my boss, she would just say it like it was,
Yeah.
And so for her, she had lived in the space. She had been a woman entrepreneur, and so I really looked to her. I also looked to my family
Cool.
a lot, who were entrepreneurs or
Yeah, that's true.
who went
Yeah.
through it. Because a year after I started my company, my younger brother started one
Oh, okay.
as well,
Oh, no
and
competition there, nothing
no
then,
competition, no.
right?
And my cousin is also an entrepreneur, and so it was for
Nice.
us being all small businesses at the same time, kind of in the same part of our growth,
Okay. Sure.
was really helpful because we could call each other up and say, like, what do I do about this? Like, how do you do this? Even though
Yeah.
we're in totally separate industries,
Yep. Sure.
they were a huge sounding block for me.
Sure. Yep.
And then I had somebody who was an extraordinarily successful businessman. And I could go to him, and the questions that he asked me were probably some of the hardest questions that anybody has asked
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But it made me think of what the answers were going to be.
Right. Yeah.
So it was that kind of little group,
Yeah.
that have helped me so much.
And that's just like that. And that's kind of what, I run into people that, again, they're really good at what they do. They're whatever they build, whatever they make, whatever they sell. So many people in our country are so good at what they do. They just struggle with a couple of things that they're not experts in. I mean, marketing is a prime example. I got to believe when you were capture marketing before the sports focus, you're talking to people all over the place that, they had an idea, but they needed to get that idea out, and they needed to have somebody take action and call, write, email, whatever. So you
Yes.
were kind of doing that marketing chunk. How often did people say, I do my own marketing, I don't need that? I mean, I can, or my neighbor does it, or my friend, or my husband. I mean, you
I
must
have
have
an
run into.
intern.
Yeah, exactly. Even better. I have an intern, right? I mean, how
Yeah.
many times have you run into that piece throughout your years doing this?
You know what? I have run into it quite a bit, and I think my biggest comeback to them is, I'm not an accountant. I certainly don't do my own accounting.
Right? Exactly.
There's reasons that we all have different talents and we all have different things, and so to
Yeah.
be able to showcase to them the need for it, and the results that um, can happen if you do it correctly,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
think has always been. And I'm someone who's so for collaboration.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you can bring different people into the scenario that's going to make everybody better, let's do it.
Right.
It doesn't have to be us versus you. It can be all of us together with it. So I think that was something that it's kind of a learning experience, quite
Sure.
honestly, for everybody. But unfortunately, some people don't truly learn it by the end.
Right. Well, and that's why, like, what I think the statistic was about 50% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years, something like that.
Mhm.
And I want to say a lot of that reason is for that exact situation where, my next book that I'm writing is on blind spots, business blind spots. And, there's so many blind spots that we don't know about, and who's going to help you. I mean, in the car, when we're driving, we have at least 3 mirrors to allow us to see our blind spots. Who's covering our blind spots when we're in business?
Mhm.
And that's where, who in your life, I'm hopefully everybody listening has somebody that doesn't have a vested interest that's going to ask, to your point, Chellee, those tough questions,
Yeah.
because that's kind of what coaches do. I mean, and that transitions into, somebody always, they ask me, why would I need a coach? That's kind of one of those questions, it's kind
Yeah.
of like you get, why would I need a marketing agent? I mean, right. It's the same kind of thing.
Right.
Right. And so what I always do is I go, I prior to Giannis, I thought that Michael Jordan was the best basketball player that's ever played. So
Mhm.
I go, I don't know the answer to this question, but somehow Michael Jordan needed Phil Jackson. I don't know what they talked about. I don't know what he did for him. I don't know why Tiger Woods has 3 or 4 coaches. I have no clue. But you know what? If the best of the best need a coach for whatever reason, it's entirely possible that you might need a marketing company, a coach, somebody to come alongside of you,
Yeah.
kind of like we do for in our respective businesses.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, could you imagine JJ Watt? And I'm assuming you know him pretty well, right?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
mean, so, but I mean, I couldn't imagine him saying, I don't need a coach. You know
Right.
what? I'm going to do my own thing. You know
Right.
what? I'm calling my own plays. I'll just beat to my own drum.
Well, and
You know,
you think of an NFL team. They have a strength and conditioning coach. They have a nutritionist.
yeah,
They have all of these people that
right,
specialize in the different things. And guess what? You need them all to be
right.
successful.
Yeah, and I get though the fact that small businesses can't spend all this money, with all these people. So, do you have any, like, if somebody called you and it was a friend, or you went to lunch with somebody starting their own business,
Mhm.
is there a couple of things that you would share with them from a marketing perspective that, hey, whatever you do this, or whatever you do, don't do that, from a marketing perspective? I want to try and tap into your marketing brain a little bit and see if you
Yeah.
can
I
share a
think,
couple of those.
it was interesting because for me, one of the greatest ways that I was able to market is truly through networking.
Okay.
It is, I always say, like, um, outside of my first job, I never sent a resume again, like a blind resume. It was
Sure.
always people saying, like, I think this position would be good for you, or I know this.
Yeah.
So it was always through networking, that those things. So I just think it is so important, particularly if you're going out on your own, to have your network and to
Sure.
build your network,
Sure.
and be able to communicate that,
Yeah. That's
depending
awesome.
upon your business.
Yeah.
Is your target market on social media, like finding out, really drilling down who your target market is,
Yeah.
and finding out where they are, how they're getting their messaging, so that you can be targeted and smart about it, versus just saying, yep, I'm going to advertise. Well,
Right.
no. Narrow down as much as you can, and you may have several target markets, but narrow down as much as you can as to who they are, developing their persona, what are they watching on TV, are they watching TV,
Sure. Sure.
going through those steps and writing that down,
Yeah.
so that whether if an opportunity comes to you, that if it fits or if it doesn't fit within
Sure.
it.
Wow, that's awesome. So in my simple mind, because I barely graduated 8th grade, I use Mr. Potato Head, right? And
Yeah.
I in my training, and I think to myself, if I could build, my perfect client, ears, eyes, everything, just I can put whatever I want, wherever I want on this, and I build this perfect person, what would they look like? So many people, Chellee, have not sat down and thought of that particular piece.
Yeah, I like
Part
the
of it
Mr.
is,
Potato Head analogy.
well, part of it is that they think that everybody should buy what I need, right?
Uh-huh.
And I get that piece. It depends on what you're selling.
Right.
But for you, for instance, you started in the marketing world, and then you honed in on the sports part, and then you even honed in farther and just looked at it from the cause marketing perspective, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's kind of how you niched yourself down. And
Yep.
I've had people say, if you could just sell to left-handed plumbers, then that would be ideal. And I get that.
Yep.
There are certain people that works for, and there are others that, that doesn't work necessarily for. How did you know that you wanted to niche down into something that specific for you?
Yeah. For me, like I said, I started out in the nonprofit world. I actually have a degree in psychology as well. And for me, it was,
Uh-oh.
watch out.
Oh, now you tell me. Wait a minute here. Great.
For
Are
me,
things
it was
okay here? Am I
everything.
okay?
We're good. We're good.
Okay, good.
We're good.
Okay. Whew, just want to make sure. Okay, go ahead.
For me, it was always about making an impact.
Okay.
How can we make an impact in people's lives? How can we make it easier? What can we do? And so, I always knew kind of that cause and that nonprofit was certainly something that was instilled in me when I was young. It was super important to me.
Sure.
But I can remember being at the Milwaukee Wave, and I had developed a charity jersey program. So the equipment manager didn't really like me because for every game there was a different jersey that we custom designed.
Nice.
But it was a custom designed jersey with different nonprofits on it.
Sure.
And then they were sold, and it was an auction, and it was
Wow.
this larger campaign that just was tremendous.
Sure.
And one of the games was for the MAC Fund. And I was able to secure Aaron Rodgers, and it was his first appearance after winning the Super Bowl.
Wow.
That he was going to come to the Milwaukee Wave game. But I also, more importantly, had the opportunity to meet a little boy named Jack. And Jack was in New York City the night before getting treatment, so radioactive that he had to sleep with metal between him and his mom that night before. And he flew in, got him at the airport, brought him right down to the arena, and Aaron and Jack met. And they played on the floor of the locker room. And when it was time for them to go out and address the crowd, and that, I can remember Aaron saying, "I don't want to go out there. I want to stay and play with Jack."
Oh my gosh.
But they went out there. They did
Sure.
that. But I'll never forget the impact that Jack had on Aaron. Not necessarily, obviously, Aaron Rodgers had an impact on Jack,
Sure.
but the impact that Jack had on Aaron, like, Aaron stayed in touch with the family until Jack passed away. Aaron had Jack on his Wheaties cereal box.
Oh my gosh.
Aaron continued to donate, to the MAC Fund. Like, there was just that moment of that impact. And I thought, man, like, here's Aaron Rodgers, who has this platform that he can use to help so many people.
Sure.
And it's a 9-year-old boy named Jack.
Yeah.
Who to this day, I'm certain if you ask Aaron Rodgers about, he's going to remember, and he has a special place for it.
Sure.
And so it was at that moment that kind of this niche formed in my head of, these guys want to do good. They don't know how to do good.
Sure.
They don't know what steps to do it or how to go about doing it. Yep. And they all say that they're going to make an impact, but really what we've seen time and time and time again with all of these athletes is it's them who's impacted the most.
Yeah.
And so that was a moment that I'll never forget. And that was kind of, as we continued going on, it really, our niche paired my nonprofit experience, my wanting to make an impact, my love of sports,
sure,
and this platform that these guys have. That's what we've narrowed down, and that's how we have come up with our niche.
And so, I mean, and you hit on so many things. Thanks for sharing all that. It's so interesting because I try and tell people every week on this show, and when I talk to them, to find your passion.
Yeah.
And you just said you took three things: your love of sports, your upbringing in nonprofit, and then the third one was, and I forgot.
It was
But
so important, Dave.
I know, exactly. That's why I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work. Okay. We're going to bleep this out. We'll start over. But I mean, what was the third one? Because I shouldn't have wrote it down.
It was nonprofit. It was sports, and it was
See?
my passion.
I know, exactly. There was something there. I'm so sorry that we lost.
No, that's okay.
But the reality is that there are those opportunities in our life to be able to, but the passion is, we have to usually dig deeper than most people really want to. I mean, I would have never have really thought that you would have connected all those dots when you started this, you know, and it was capture marketing. And I remember trying to get you clients, and I remember trying to make connections for you. And, you know, you seem to be dialed in then. Yeah. And then then all of a sudden the JJ Watt thing happened. And then all of a sudden it just kind of morphed into the capture sports part. Yep. So just because you had your vision or your dream or your passion way back when, it sometimes takes time to morph into what it needs to be, right?
It did. It truly did. And never did I think that I would be working with the sports athletes like I am today.
Sure.
I wasn't in that world. I loved playing sports. I watched it, but I wasn't in that world.
Sure.
And so for me, like I said, my business plan was initially working with companies on their cause marketing side of things. And, you know, it goes to that networking, it goes to the opportunities. Like we had this opportunity with JJ, and, you know, being able to see the growth and leadership that he as an individual had, and their foundation is just something I'll eternally be grateful for. But as we got to work with him and our network expanded, and being able to work with other athletes, it took time.
Sure.
It didn't happen overnight, you know, like once we started working with JJ, I thought, okay, you know, maybe there's going to be an opportunity, maybe not, but it wasn't 6 months. It wasn't 9 months, you know, it was years. Like this is 9 years in the making of us being able to do it. And each day we're learning something new, and we're making new relationships, and, you know, we're honing in. I love when you said earlier about the passion part of it, because even, you know, with these athletes, if they're not authentic and they're not passionate about something, we always tell them, don't do it. Like people are going to see through it. People are going to know that you're doing this because of something you should, or it's going to help this, or it's going to help that. Like, no, we're not doing it unless you are truly touched by it. You're truly passionate about it. You're willing to put your name behind it. Like it's so important.
And the reverse is so true too, because I'll never forget the time that we were at Slinger Super Speedway, and there was a race there, and there were NASCAR. It was a special where there were NASCAR drivers that were racing, and we had pit passes, and we were back in the pits, and and I won't mention who, but one of the famous drivers, was in the wall, whatever, their night cut short, he's in the back, and we're just walking around minding our own business, and a little kid comes up to this driver who pretty much everybody would know if I said who it was. And he said, "Mister, can I have an autograph?" And he looks at him and he goes, "I don't have time for an effing autograph." And he used the real word. I don't use it on this show. And I thought to myself, ever since that day, every time I see him, I hope he crashes into the wall, because you know what? I just have no tolerance for athletes that don't appreciate the fans that appreciate them so much, especially a little kid. I mean, the kid was devastated. I mean, he was so excited that this was going to be, this is going to be my day. I'm going to get an autograph from this guy. And so they are on such an elevated platform already. Yeah. And so, you know, unfortunately, there's a behavior that has to come with that.
Yeah.
So I think that they're, like you said before, they're good at what they do, but they don't know how to turn that into, you know, the philanthropic, the nonprofit, the cause. So I love that you're kind of acting as that liaison between kind of a rough and crude human being,
Yeah.
athlete or not,
Yeah.
and to that cause.
Yeah.
How do most athletes have a cause in their mind already that you've experienced, or are they looking for, something like that in their life?
One of the things we work with them on is really honing in on what their initiatives are going to be.
Gotcha.
There's some that, as I say, want to save the world, and
Yeah.
you can't. And so, but there's also some of them that maybe are 19, 20 years old, and they don't. They may have life experiences. They may not have
Yeah.
like a ton of life experiences to truly figure out their cause. And so, it's at that point exposing them to different things so that they can develop what their passion may be, what their interest may be. But we always tell them, I would say a lot of them come to us and say, we want to start a foundation. I'm like, nope. um, you know, we have to take a step back first to figure out, okay, how much time do you have? What do you really
Sure.
want to accomplish? What do you really want to do? Is the
Wow.
foundation the right thing for you right now? Is the fiscal
Sure.
sponsor maybe something, or lending your name to something because of where you're at, or you don't know? But once they do start a foundation, it's really looking at those initiatives. And I tell them that for a reason to say yes and a reason to say no. It doesn't become personal then. It's these are my initiatives for my foundation. You as an individual athlete can still have your own causes that you want to support, but
Sure.
this foundation is going to support this.
Wow.
And so it's really helping them hone in on what it is and how they can make the biggest impact.
And that's so one of your focuses is to kind of step into that mentorship role almost, because man, I think of 20-year-olds and now you think, holy cow, right? I thought that was just last week for me.
It's
you
not.
know
Remember, we're old friends.
exactly. So I'm thinking, oh, this is a long time ago. But a long time ago in my 20s, if I had that, you know that skill, if I would have been blessed with that skill to the point where I would be able to do it professionally, I'm not sure, Chellee, that I would have been open to anybody's
Yeah.
counsel. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you come alongside them and help them understand that you're for them, not against them, that they may not know it all? I mean, that's got to be really tough.
It is, but the athletes that we have been blessed to work with,
Yeah.
they all they all come to us because they want to make an impact.
Sure.
They want to do that. A lot of them, because of the requirements of their sport, they're not going to have time to run a full campaign or program or foundation. And so they're looking at what we've done in the past and how we can help them.
Sure.
They've been really receptive to it. And kind of like how capture morphed into capture sports marketing. Some of these guys get into it and say, okay, I want to tweak this initiative because I did this and this really impacted me.
Okay.
And so, not to say that you can't add things to it as you get older and as you just figure out and live life more,
Sure.
to be able to do that. But I haven't had struggles with that. And
Wow.
you're right.
That's
Having an
awesome.
18-year-old and 17-year-old right now,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, oh my
But your
gosh,
mom, so that's completely
right.
different. So
But I think too, it is so many people want something from an athlete.
sure.
And they typically, or they should, have a very small circle
Sure.
around them
Sure.
of individuals that are going to look out for their
Yep.
best interest.
And that makes
Um, and for us to become a trusted partner, it doesn't happen day one,
sure.
but we'll prove that we're in it for the best interest of that athlete,
Sure.
not the best interest of anything else.
Yeah. Wow.
So
And
it's
that's
just,
got to
but
be
it's,
a tough spot to be, right? I mean,
yeah, but
that
it's
takes
like
a lot
building
of
a
work.
relationship with that,
Yeah.
within the business world.
Sure.
If you want partners, you have to take the time and you have to prove yourself. And you have to look out what is best for your partner, for your individual, for them, versus might not always be best for you, but it's
Right.
best for them.
And that's so funny that you bring that up because I do a lot of work with the personality profile, the DISC personality
Yeah.
profile. So, and everybody falls into one of four categories. Well, there's this one category, the D people, that they want it done now, right? They're like instantaneous. I want it done. I don't care about anything. I don't care the quality. I don't care who's doing it with me. I don't care who I'm hurting along the way. No, it's not like I wake up that I'm going to hurt somebody, but I'm a high D person. I just want to get it done.
Yeah.
So when you say it takes time, there's something in my brain, Chellee, right away that fights you on that.
Yeah.
Because that's my personality going, no, you know what? I don't have time. Okay.
Yeah.
I want it done now. So I got to believe that you, especially some instance, overnight sensation, so to speak, that were nobody in one day and they found fame from their skills that they had the next day. That's got to be hard for them to be like, hey, let's just slow down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you work through that with them?
Some of them do a better job than others.
Sometimes
I do a better job than others.
Yeah.
But I too, Dave, I'm a like, let's get stuff done.
Right.
But I also understand and I also respect that there's some unique challenges and some unique opportunities with being an athlete, and particularly if you're an overnight sensation and everybody wants a piece and everybody wants to be involved and everybody wants to, like, ultimately they're humans.
Right.
And a lot of times they're thrown into a dream that they had all the time, but now all of a sudden it's reality.
Yeah.
And the importance of having good people around you, whether it is your agent, whether it is your financial advisor, whether it is your parents or your mom or your dad, your marketing agent. There's so many people that even in a small group with athletes have to be involved with. But I think realizing and understanding that they have to figure some stuff out too.
Sure.
And they need the people around them, because as you know, and everybody, social media, one mistake and
you're done.
People know. And
exactly.
I mean, I always say thank goodness there wasn't social media when I was younger, and to be able to
right.
go through all of that I see our kids going through with it.
They didn't even have a TV when I was young. So.
Oh yes, you did.
You know what? That you touch on something that's really important, and I spend a lot of time with my clients talking about self-awareness, because if you don't have that self-awareness, you really are going to struggle in understanding other people, how to connect with them and communicate with them. So I got to believe that your psychology side then kicks in a little bit on the personal side of you as you mentor and coach and encourage people down that road to help them with that self-awareness piece.
It does. I often say I use my psychology degree probably more than my business in some of these respects. But I think it goes back to that relationship and that trust within the relationship and the networking that and you know what? Being real, guess what? I'm going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And when I make a mistake, I'm going to own up to it. And I'll tell you, I made the mistake because I'm not perfect, just like you're not perfect.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's just being real, like my clients know that I have 2 boys and, and know more about us besides work.
Sure.
It's really that connection, to be able to understand or try to understand where they're at versus where you're at.
That's so cool. So I want to pivot on something as we start to come in for a landing. You mentioned the radiothon, and so I wanted you to kind of unpack that, because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if there's no sports, there's no gatherings, there's no Chellee. Chellee's looking for a job. It's like, right? Yeah. But you did a fantastic job of, the new word in business now is pivoting, whatever. You shifted your focus, short-term, long-term, whatever, from these in-person events to something different. So can you share with us what you're doing with that?
Yeah. So with COVID hitting, we had, mid-April to, the beginning of June is typically for our NFL clients the busiest time because it's their off season. It's when they do their charitable events. So we had 6 major events between April 17th and June 5th. And when COVID shut down the world, it was not only what are we going to do with capture, but what are these foundations
Sure.
that were planning on all of this money from being raised, and they were utilizing it to help people that, guess what, still need help.
Yeah, right.
What are they going to do?
Yeah.
And so we shifted, we pivoted, we did a couple of different virtual events so that we were still able to raise money for different organizations. And then we also have done a couple radiothons and have a couple more coming up. But these radiothons essentially are working with a nonprofit. Most of them have been for COVID relief and or their foundation. And we partner with a athlete, we partner with a radio station, and it becomes an 11, 12-hour day of fun that you can hear from all different athletes, coaches, individuals, and entertainment kind of throughout the whole day. And they've been so fun. The stories have been, things that you haven't heard before from different people. And this one that we did in the Milwaukee area with Milwaukee Bucks Pat Connaughton, we were able to have, for the first time ever, 3 MVPs involved in an event in the day. So we had Giannis, and we had Yelich, and we had Aaron Rodgers. And then we also had the 3 coaches of the big, in Milwaukee. So we had Coach Bud, we had Craig Counsell, and we had Coach LaFleur from Green Bay, and just having them in a different environment. It wasn't anything about football. It was about life. It was about fun things, and still being able to raise money. So we raised $212,000 with that one.
That's fantastic.
And have several more coming up with different athletes.
So 12 hours you were involved in this.
12 hours. So it was,
wow.
So it's
do a car wash next time, Chellee. It might be shorter time. Okay.
Right. Well, and we laughed because we went back and we're like, okay, we did 190 images for this, campaign.
Wow.
And, looking at people, I think if you were ever in the event world or you're in the sponsorship world or, different, you go into things and now you see things differently. Like I can't go into an arena or a basketball game with being like, holy cow, do you know what it took to do that? And look at that sponsor activation. That's really cool. My husband's like, can we please just watch the game?
Yeah. Chellee, you're not invited to the next game. So
but some
I'm staying home tonight. So
are fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's 12 hours. We could do everything, everything was done remotely. Everything was done from our offices or homes or wherever it may be. And you just shift and you get it done.
Yeah. And they obviously are excited to try and get their seasons back rolling as well.
They are. Yeah.
So do they know each other outside? I mean, did they know each other prior to this much?
Some of them do. Yeah. Some of them absolutely do.
Okay.
And that was fun because Pat Connaughton from the Bucks, he actually did some of the majority of the interviews. And so, with his teammates or with his friends, what he asked them is things that, others couldn't ask.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we don't know, we don't have that experience with that. With that player. So it was so fun. It was fun to listen to. It was fun to be a part of.
So what's coming up? What you got? Any ones you want to share that are coming up?
We do. We're going to have one in Indianapolis.
Okay.
We're going to have one in Chicago.
Nice.
We're going to have one in Detroit, and we're going to have one in Vegas.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, those are the ones that we know that we have coming up. But we're also taking the opportunity to, for us and for our team, we went through and said, okay, we're helping all of these athletes with causes that are important to them.
Yeah.
what are some of the things that are important to us that we can develop a campaign and then find an athlete that's passionate about it. So we developed a mental health campaign called End Stigma, Change Lives, that will be coming out and launching this summer, this fall,
Okay.
and have 5 athletes from across the country that have been touched, either themselves or their family members, with mental health, and are really going to help us to be able to go out and raise awareness and that stigma.
Yeah. Wow. That is so cool. And it
Yeah.
just reminds me, and I hope I'm getting this right. I mean, Michael Phelps, I've seen his commercial about it's okay to talk to
Yes.
somebody. I mean, it's just so calming to know that, regardless if it's somebody as famous as Michael Phelps or somebody like me, that it's okay to talk to somebody about
Yes.
some of the things that you're going through, that you may not be built to handle these things, and that's not a negative to
Right.
anybody. It just is, we're not, it's kind of like taking your car, and getting it fixed. I mean, I don't take that as like a negative on me. I just don't know how to fix cars.
Yep.
I don't even want to know how to fix cars,
Right.
right? I have
Can't
no
help you
interest, so
there
I
either.
take it to the guy, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's comforting to know that, a pro athlete like a Michael Phelps was open and comfortable enough to share, something like that. And so
Well,
hopefully,
I just today, Dak Prescott made an announcement in regards to a large donation, and within it, he said, "I've been dealing with major anxiety during this COVID."
yeah,
And for us, we've done programs within mental health or within bullying before with specific athletes, and the impact of going to the school and seeing them speak and then being around afterwards when kids come up to them or kids come up to their counselors and
yeah,
say, you know what, if it's okay for you to say this, it's okay for me to say this.
yeah,
So I'm going to do that now.
yeah, yeah,
That's where we know that we're making a difference
sure,
and we're able to help others. So there's some of those campaigns that we're developing um, as a capture
sure.
team, and then involving different athletes.
That's so awesome. And it kind of brings us all the way around to where you started when you use the word collaborate. It's really, if we're able to talk amongst ourselves, so to speak, in a positive way, and share some of those weaknesses, some of those vulnerabilities. Even in business, I mean, I run into people that they will not admit anything. I have no problems. I have no weaknesses. I got, and I'm like, well, I'm a coach. Why am I here? I mean, why'd you call me?
Yeah.
And it's like, you can have it both ways. I mean, if you want to sit for an hour and talk about nothing and pay me a couple $100, that's fine.
Right.
It's really probably not the smartest thing for you to do, you
Yeah.
know, and that's where, to your point before, you start asking some of those questions. And if they've
Yep.
never thought of those questions before and have to wrestle with those answers,
Yeah.
it's really kind of fun to watch somebody, mature into that. And they can be 20 years old or they can be 60, 70, doesn't make any difference on the age. So
Without a doubt.
one last question for you. What's something that you want to share with the listeners that not a lot of people would know about you?
Oh. Personally or business?
You pick.
All right. I pitched a no-hitter in high school.
Oh my gosh. There you go.
And if you ask anybody in my family,
Oh, they weren't there, so they don't.
no,
They can't
they were
testify.
there.
Okay, good.
They will tell you the reason that I got the no-hitter was because although I was accurate, I was very slow. And they were used to much faster pitching. So they had
great
trouble.
family. Great family. Well, you know what? Don't invite them to any of your events, because that's not the kind of
It's
thing.
probably the truth because of who the team was that we played. They were used to like super, super fast pitchers.
Oh my gosh. How cool is that? Well,
But I did have a no-hitter.
well, see, there you fit right in. So if you have any MLB clients, then obviously you have probably a one up on them. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, yes, I certainly share my expertise with them.
Totally, I would. So do you offer coaching baseball and?
Oh my gosh, no.
No, okay.
No,
Awesome.
still not me.
That is so cool. If somebody listening wanted to learn more about you, get in contact with you, learn about, your vision, what's the best way to have people reach out to you, Chellee?
Yeah, I think if they go to our website, capturesportsmarketing.com, there's information on there that they can either reach out to me by phone or email. I'm
Okay.
happy to connect with them.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. I mean, an hour just went like that.
I know.
And thank you so much for sharing. There's been a ton of good information. I took some notes for myself, so I always learn when I talk to you, and I
I
really.
thought you were writing down like places that you needed to edit because I made mistakes.
No, not at all. I'm looking at myself going, okay, what's my cause? I'm thinking to myself, what's your passion? I'm looking at what's my target market. So, thanks a lot. I thought life was going along really good. And now you just upended the whole thing. So
Great, great.
this
Glad I
is
could help.
awesome. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. That's why we do these every week. So
Perfect.
thank you so much for hanging out with us. And,
Thank you.
the radiothons, are those on your website as well?
They are, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if anybody wants to tune in on
Yep.
those, and is the 11 hours or like recorded somewhere?
It's all live. So yes, but then we do have like from the one that we just did with
Yeah.
Milwaukee, we do have some of the interviews that we'll be putting up there and putting up out on our social media as well.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm honored
you.
to call you a friend, and I'm glad to see where things are going for you. And just keep going and continue to build that passion. And look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you, my friend.
Take care.